Before we begin today's episode, I need to say something clearly. Gold Star Stories did not end. We paused. We paused because building something like this takes more than belief. It takes real support, real follow-through. I expected some of that support to come through. It didn't. We had media conversations that never materialized, articles that were written but never released, podcast interviews that were recorded but never aired. Time was given, trust was given, energy was given, and then silence. It's not about ego, it's about reality. When people say they support something, but it never turns into action, the cost isn't exposure. It's momentum, it's resources, it's hours that could have been spent building. And while that was happening, the work didn't stop. So I pushed harder and I stretched resources. My family felt that stretch. We sold our vehicle to keep the last run of episodes alive. And in the middle of all that, I was criticized for trying to monetize. Let me be clear. This is not about money. This is about giving a voice to Gold Star family members who may not feel like they fit inside the narrow version of what people think this community should look like. Gold Star families are not a brand. They are not a single mold. They come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different lives. Everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves a voice. I did not sign up for the military, but I did choose to stand beside families who have carried the cost of it. And I will not follow rules that were never mine. This platform will continue. And any future sponsor, if there ever is one, will understand from day one. This show is unrestricted, uncensored, and it will never silence a Gold Star family member's story to protect someone else's comfort. I will not give up because of my job. I will not give up because someone disagrees with my life. And I will not give up on families who deserve to be heard. Now let's get back to what matters. Today's episode is with Kim Lachaume. Kim is a sister. She's also a veteran, and she's been carrying this loss for nearly 2 decades. Her brother, Corporal Nick Arvanitis, served with the U.S. Army. He was killed in Iraq in October 2006. In this conversation, Kim shares who Nick was before the uniform, what changed after his deployments, how the notification happened, and what it looks like when a sibling becomes the point of contact and the steady one in a moment that breaks a family. This is Nick's story through the voice of someone who knew him best.
Marine Captain Brian Latendry died earlier this month in an explosion in Iraq. He was 27, a husband and father, and he was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, a few miles from where he grew up. As America observes Memorial Day,
I have been directed by the President of the United States and the Commandant of the Marine Corps to inform you that today at 0530, your son was killed in action while in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Not very many of us can accomplish our goals or our dreams, and he always knew where he wanted to go, and he did it.
A Gold Star family is one who has lost a loved one serving in the United States military. It's a distinction no family ever seeks, a bond shared through sacrifice, remembrance, and profound loss. I'm Nick Latendry, and I've been a Gold Star sibling for over 18 years. In those 18 years, I've learned that while ceremonies fade, medals are stored away, and life continues, the story doesn't end for the families left behind. This podcast is dedicated to remembering those who gave everything for their country and to telling the lesser-known stories, the quiet, powerful journeys of grief, strength, resilience, and hope that follows after the flags are folded and the crowds disperse. These are Gold Star Stories. Tell me a little bit about growing up with Nick. What was he like?
He was a cool kid. I have a son who's 12. So when I look at him, I'm kind of like, ooh, there's a lot of striking similarities there between them. Both athletes. Nick started, he played soccer. He liked soccer when he was younger, went into playing baseball. He was like a really tall kid growing up. So like he shot up. He was one of the taller kids in his class. So baseball didn't really agree with him because you really need that motor skill, and he just didn't have it. He just couldn't understand how to like bend down for the ball and stuff, which is always funny. I was looking at a picture yesterday actually of him with his gawky stance in the batter's box, and I showed it to my son, and my son's like, he can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, he did. He survived by the field, but he ended up playing Pop Warner football in town. So, kept up with athletics, but when he got into high school, he got into music, and he was in the band and he also wrestled for the high school. So he was a lot of fun, always into something. He was just that laid back kid who just, was friends with everybody. And then when he got older, he kind of became the life of the party and a little bit more outgoing, especially when he was around his wrestling friends. They're kind of like a special little group. And he was definitely the epitome of like, what you think of your high school wrestling type of kid. So, but very cool, very just fun kid. Video games, we used to always fight over the Nintendo. I got
Yeah.
the 8-bit Nintendo for, I think it was like my 6th birthday. He ended up taking it over because he ended up liking Super Mario a little bit better than I did. But that was like a lot of things that we used to do. We together is we'd play video games. We'd go out in the neighborhood, play with the neighborhood kids. Usually, because he was younger, he'd get chased around, and by my friends who were older.
Did you guys have a military family or any military connections growing up?
No, it was just grandparents. Both my grandfathers served in the Navy, and then my grandmother was also in the Waves on my dad's side. So that was really our only military connection. He kind of followed me to the military. I joined the U.S. Naval Sea Cadets in my sophomore year of high school, and I dragged him into it because I was like, "Oh, you got to try it out." And he went actually to the recruit training of their little boot camp the summer after me. So I was staffing the middle school program while he was there as a trainee with the high school kids. So it was kind of cool.
At that point, did he already know that he was going in? Was that always a goal of his, was to serve?
No, no, school, he wasn't like a straight A student or anything. Like he was your average student. He was just your average kid in high school. And when he got onto the wrestling team, the coach was, I believe he was a sergeant major or something in the army, and he was a ranger, and that's really where he grew his interest, was just talking to him, and he kind of took over as like a father figure to him because our parents our mom and dad were divorced.
So how did everybody feel when he originally said he wanted to join?
I mean, I was already in the Air Force, so I was like, cool. I tried to talk him into the Air Force, and he's like, no, I want to go be a ranger. And I'm like, dude, what the hell, dude? Like, you don't want to go be a ranger. Like, I had a friend who was a ranger at the time. He's just like, don't. He's like, they're not that special. Believe me, they're not that special. So he's like, tell him to go find something else. And he's like, nope, I want to go infantry. I want to be a ranger. So I'm like, hey, if you want to get into all that, running gun type of stuff. I mean, we're talking a few years after 9/11. So everybody, we were all rah rah, let's go fight the terrorists. Let's bring the battle for what they did in our homeland. So, being a ranger wasn't, anything that you didn't hear a kid in our town say that they wanted to be. It's an honorable profession, an honorable job. And, he was in really good shape because he was a wrestler and he had that role model who was a ranger himself. So that's kind of where he went, and then another teacher, Mr. Adams, he was actually both our history teacher in I think our junior year of high school, and he was also a ranger. So, he was another guy that we both grew up looking up to, and he was, my brother wanted to kind of follow in those footsteps and go over. Even though I was like, hey, Air Force has, special operations. If you really want to go that
Yes.
route, you'll stay in 5-star hotels versus in the dirt all the time. But Army's cool too.
That was something constantly coming up in our house. To each their own, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't
So
get it.
tell me about early service. Did he
Exactly.
change at all, from the time that he joined, going through training and all? How long did he serve before his last deployment?
Oh yeah, he was when he I went out to his graduation, at Fort Benning, and it was just AIT. It wasn't that one station unit training type stuff. They didn't have all the fancy names, but yeah, I mean, he was all ate up. He was all into it. He loved it. He loved the infantry. He thought this was the coolest thing I could have ever signed up for. He went off to ranger training, and when he got to the ranger training unit, he wasn't as happy with it as he thought he'd be. It was kind of funny because when I talked to one of his friends, they were like, he could have, he ended up dropping out at the end. Like he ended up failing out. His friend told me, he's like, that was completely on purpose. It wasn't him. He wanted to go to the 82nd Airborne. He just liked those guys. He liked their mission. He liked the unit. He wanted to go to Fort Bragg and he wanted to be part of the 82nd because of their history and who they were. So I thought that was really unique. And I'm like, so tell me what happened. And they said that, well, they were in training and they were doing one of their their missions that they were running, and he left his cover out in the woods, and they recovered it. And they're like, nobody just leaves their cover out in the woods. But it was like his final, yeah, dude, you need to make a decision what you want to do. And he openly said, he's like, I don't think the Ranger unit is for me. I think being part of the 82nd is a good friend of his on the wrestling team. His dad was part of the 82nd Airborne, and that was someone who he was really, really close with. And he always told me, he's like, don't do the Rangers, go to the 82nd. You get to jump all the time, and it's a great life over there. You'll love it. So I think he really took that to heart at that point and said, yeah, I think the 82nd is where I want to be, and that's where he requested to go, and that's where he ultimately went to, the first and 50 EIR.
Did he have any prior deployments?
Yeah, he went to Afghanistan, for the elections. So what was that? Early 2003, 2004, or 2004ish. Once he got on station, he wasn't there too long before they were already going out the door. And I remember, he went out there. Just it was like a quick mobilization. I think like a 3 or 4 month that he went. He went out to Afghanistan, and they were just doing like air assault
Ok.
missions.
Were there any concerns? Like, what were the feelings while he was over there the first time?
When he got
Okay.
back, so I had just gotten back from Iraq. Basically, we high-fived on that deployment. I came back from Iraq. He went to Afghanistan. So when he got back, my mom gave me a call, and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "I don't know if he's doing so good. Why don't you go out and see him?" So I grabbed my friend who was actually from Fayetteville, and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "we can drive down together if you want." We drove down to visit him down at Fort Bragg, and he didn't really say too much. He said that, they did come under fire. There was like a short little story that he didn't really get deeply into with me. He was showing me some pictures from the deployment because everybody had those disposable cameras back then. But he got them developed, and he was showing me the pictures. And he's just like, yeah, this is what was going on in this at this time and that time. And he was showing me some of the aircraft that he got to rappel out of and stuff. And then he made a mention about, yeah, there was this issue with a kid who opened fire on the unit, and they had to shoot back at him, and they had ultimately killed this Afghani kid. And it didn't sit well with him. He didn't want to elaborate. He didn't really want to talk. It was kind of yeah, but hey, let's go to the mall. I got to get a new sweatshirt. Hey, let's go to the movies, but hey, the liquor store's right next door. We can bring it into the movies and go watch South Park the movie. It was actually the movie we went and saw. So he didn't really want to talk about it. He kind of closed off to it. And, he just, like I said, he was bought into the mission. So May 1st, 2006, we had just lost his friend in Iraq who he was on the wrestling team with. So we lost his friend, Bobby Masillo, who same graduating class, same town. They grew up playing baseball together. We're on the same wrestling team together. So we went through that loss May 1st. He had actually called me and was like, holy shit, they got Bobby. And I was just like, who's Bobby and what's going on? And he's like, Bob and so I believe that it was an IED that got him. He was serving with the Marine Corps, and he's like, I got to come home. He's like, I got to come home. He's like, I'm going to be there for my friends. So he ended up getting it through his unit to where he got to come home for I think it was like 2 weeks where he got to come home and, kind of settle everyone down and, just be a part of everyone and kind of be part of that grieving process. So that was in May. We lost my grandfather in June. So he was home on block leave that time. And, we talked, and he's just like, yeah, we're going to be deploying soon. Again, there was no concerns for him. He's like, I'm just going to go out there. He was so pissed about his friend. Really. He's just like, yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm going to avenge my friend. So that was kind of where his mentality was. And then they left in, I believe, August, like the first couple weeks of August. He wasn't out there long before he died. He was actually the first casualty from the unit when they went out there. But he called. We talked when our last phone call. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to surprise mom. Don't tell her." He goes, "But when I come up on my block leave to come home, he's like, I'm going to come home. I want to surprise her, so I'm going to need you to pick me up at the airport." So we were starting to talk about that. But when I asked him about what was going on out there, he's like, "I don't want to talk about here." And it was like just an automatic shutdown. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about what's going on out here. But just the little things I was able to get out of him. It was a rough time. They were up in Beji, Iraq. There was an oil refinery out there. That's ultimately why they were there, was to defend that oil refinery. So he's like, yeah, we've come under fire. Yeah, it's a shithole. It's not good. But he's like, I don't want anybody worrying about me. I'm fine. And that was our last conversation. So I had just gotten out for active duty, and I had just gotten home from school and a knock on the door, and it was the Air Force, not the Army ROTC guy from UNH was actually at the door. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing here? Like I was just trying to get back into the reserves at the time. So I was like, what's this shit? Like just not even thinking the worst. And then they broke it to me because he put me as his point of contact. He didn't want my mom being the first to know. He made me the first to know. And I was just like, that son of a bitch. Like you got to be shitting me right now. And they told me, and it was just like, I didn't believe it at first. Um, it definitely, it knocked me back. I remember I like fell back into the stairs, and they had already gone to my grandparents because they were trying to figure out like where I was living because they didn't have my new home of record because I had just moved up to Manchester. I was staying with my mom at the time. And yeah, my grandparents came running over, and I called my mom and told her what happened, and she's just like, "No, you're lying." And I'm like, "No, real deal." And she came home immediately, and we went through the process. What floored me was my immediate reaction was, "How the hell did it happen? What happened?" And they couldn't tell, like they wouldn't tell me at first, and I'm like, "Well, what the fuck happened, guys?" I'm like, "You guys have to have a story." Like they didn't just say, "Yeah, he's dead, just notify the next of kin." Like that's bullshit. And they're like, "Oh, well, what did they say?" They told me, "Oh, there was a convoy and they were out fighting in a battle out on the ground and he got shot." So that's the initial story I got. Later on, I got a whole different story when we started getting the phone calls from friends. Of course, they didn't they told his unit that they couldn't talk to us until we were officially notified. So they had them shut down on communications back at the FOB. Um, they were told, do not contact the family, do not have any conversations with the family, don't message them on what was it, MySpace at the time, Facebook, don't put anything online, nothing until we were notified. And then they had to wait like I think like 24 hours to contact us before they could actually say, hey, I was with him, or whatever the case may be. So the news got to us pretty quick. If you back it up in Iraqi time, it was actually October 5th when he died, and that October 5th is his birthday. So I was just like, fuck, that still just doesn't sit with me. But yeah, the people started contacting us. People from his unit started contacting us. They wouldn't tell us what happened because I'd be like, what happened? I'm like, can somebody tell me what happened out there? And none of the guys downrange would tell us what happened. So it was frustrating, it was aggravating, and I just kind of went into survival mode at that point. Tried to keep myself mentally stable as far as like I went back to school the next day, and my professors were like, "Are you shitting me? Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Because if I stay home, it's not going to be a good day." Um, everyone copes differently. But I started hearing from some of his people, from some of his friends. The condolences came in. The news stations started coming and started bothering my mom. So I'm like, I got to do something. So I started talking to the news stations, and that was my whole purpose. I put a purpose to everything because I'm like, you know what? I'm like, everyone's going to know who my brother is. Like he was downrange. He died fighting. You're going to know who he is. We're going to correct. Like news stations are really crazy. Like they put out a lot of false information. And I'm like, yeah, correcting stuff left and right, trying to handle.
It's a very similar experience to what I had too. I mean, same time frame, so media frenzy and stuff like that. I just remember the house being just crawling with news teams at one point. I had just had my wisdom teeth taken out, so I was high on Percocet at
Yeah.
the same exact time that all these news teams were in my house, and it was just like, this is overwhelming. So, community support for you after all of this goes down. Do you have
Yeah.
any memories of how the community came out to remember him or support you guys?
Yeah, the community itself was great. I mean, we grew up in Salem, New Hampshire. So my grandparents settled in Salem, New Hampshire. My mom, my uncles all graduated from Salem High. I graduated from Salem High. He graduated from Salem High. So generational there, kind of, townies, I guess you can say. I still live there, but the town was really good. Like the junior ROTC instructors in town were like right on it. They're like, nope, we got to support this family. So they were reaching out with support. All his friends' families from high school reached out with support. He wasn't too far removed from high school. I mean, we're talking, what, a couple years. He graduated in 03, so we're talking 06. Um, everyone was just awesome. Everyone was just awesome. The town wanted to support in every single way. At times it was overwhelming because, It was, oh, hey, we want to do this memorial. Hey, we want to do that. It's just like, can you leave me the fuck alone right now? Like, I want to celebrate my brother. I want him remembered. I want this town to remember who he is because he was such an awesome guy. But I'm like, it was just so overwhelming. It was so overwhelming with how many people just out of the woodworks. His funeral was huge. I mean, there were people in the streets outside the church. I mean, it was just people coming, kids coming back from college to come and, be together. And that's really what I saw was like his graduating class, like everybody tried to come back to be together, which was really cool. Cause I knew them. I knew a lot of the kids too. So it was kind of like, hey, we do have a support system here. And that was pretty cool.
He was not married, right? When brother died, he was not married.
No,
So
he
who
was
did
young.
that responsibility fall
No
back on as
kids,
far
no
as funeral planning?
no
You said you
extended
were
family like that.
you were named as the first point of contact. So was that you, or did you go to mom and dad still, or?
That was me. A lot of it fell on me. Like my mom fell apart. Like she fell apart. Of course, like when we came up to like the actual funeral arrangements, my mom was, was putting, pieces together. But a lot of it fell on me. I mean, I dealt with the media. I dealt with, the funeral home who straight up came to us and was like, you guys aren't paying a dime. We can handle the funeral arrangements. We're just going to ask you some basic, simple things just to personalize it. But we really want to help you out and we want to take charge as to our piece because that's, as a funeral director, that's what we do. So really, really awesome. Um, they were super helpful in kind of taking that burden off of us. But I mean, we still had to sit there. When Nick finally arrived back to New Hampshire, that was just another overwhelming day. We went up to, my mom had said, I'm going up to the airport because she's like, I told him when he comes home, no matter what, I'm going to be there. So she kind of wanted to do that alone, but I was like, nope, I'm going up too. I need to go to be a part of this. So we went up to the Manchester airport. We met up with him. We were there with the funeral directors and stuff. And the funeral directors kind of have like this cool little way about them about kind of they grieve with death a little differently and they deal with death a lot differently than I think anybody else does. I mean, they see it on a daily basis, but they were kind of keeping me level, kind of making me laugh, dark humor kind of stuff. And they were great the whole time. But we had a police escort all the way from Manchester down to Salem, which is like roughly 25 minutes away, maybe 30 minutes away. And they shut down the whole highway, which was really cool because we were driving behind the hearse and it was just weird because there was no cars on the highway. The state troopers literally blocked off every exit as we went down the highway. And I mean, 93 is pretty busy. I mean, it's a major highway in New Hampshire. And to see that, it was kind of cool. My mom and I were laughing about it because we're like, if Nick was here, like he'd be laughing his ass off, thinking that this is the coolest thing on earth, that he got to stop the highway all for him. So it was, it was one of those moments that you can smile about, but you kind of need those moments.
So being the main point of contact, did you still feel like everybody was kind of there to support the parents, though? I feel like siblings in this position often, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm feeling bad for myself or for other siblings, because I don't feel like that's necessarily what I'm trying to point out, but it's almost like forgotten about. We're the afterthought. And that becomes very numbing to a certain extent when everybody's like, how's your mom? How's your mom? How's your mom? Did you experience that at all?
No, I mean, like Nick and I were both we're from Salem. I graduated with the class of 2000 and he was the class of 2003. So I was a senior when he was a freshman. So a lot of our friends, like we knew each other. My friends had siblings that went to school with him. So I felt like my friends were like right there. My friend Michelle, like we've been friends since 6th grade. We're still really good friends. We still, like we both work for the VA now. So we both, we've got a lot of similarities. We still talk and everything, but she was right by my side. Like the minute she heard about it, she called me and, she was right by my side through the whole thing. And without that support, it probably would have been a lot rougher. His friends, the Stickneys, Melissa Stickney, she was great. That's his friend Keith's mom. That's his dad who was with the 82nd Airborne and was the one who kind of was like, yeah, hey dude, 82nd's great. His name's Bob. They were great with the family. They were there for both my mom and myself. So it was really cool. And they took like a lot of the brunt off of us as well. Cause they were like, hey, after the wake, we're going to have a get together with everybody there. Like all the high school kids are back. We had some of the guys from his unit who were on block leave who actually came out. Guys he went to basic training with had come back, had come out to visit and come be a part of all his services, which was awesome. So they were like, "Hey, we see some thirsty paratroopers who need to come and be around everybody and share some stories." So they invited them over the house, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. Like, they took a big brunt off of us, so that way people would kind of let us deal with what we need to deal with as a family. But I feel like my mom kind of became a little more reclusive. Um, you know, she's a private person. She's just kind of like, I need to deal with things on my own, away from everybody. And again, everybody grieves differently, and that's how she grieves. With me, I'd rather grieve with a bunch of people. I think that's just the piece of being part of the military and having lost friends on my own tour. That we come together, where my mom doesn't want to come together. She wants to just kind of grieve by herself and deal with what she needed to deal with. And it's still kind of that same way today. It's you know, we talk a little bit about Nick. I'm a little bit more
Mhm.
open with my husband and, of course, with my kids, because I want them to know who their uncle was or is. But my mom is still pretty reclusive. When she goes out, every year and puts, pumpkins and flowers out at his site, it's she just wants to do that alone, away from everybody. So, um, you know, just two totally different things. But the Stickneys were great. They brought everyone together. Funny story. So again, we had some of the paratroopers who were on block leave. They came in. Chris Reynolds, who was one of my brother's really tight good friends, who gave us the kind of story of what he saw happen when my brother got killed. He was really cool. He was really supportive. He was kind of shy and off from the family, but really cool guy. So it was just nice to have that there. They said, "Hey, thirsty paratroopers need to come over the house." So funny story. We made the pallbearer. We told the 82nd, because they sent out a bunch of troops to kind of be pallbearers and stuff, and the whole military funeral piece to it. And we backed them off, and we're like, "No, Nick is not just about military. Nick was a musician. He was a wrestler. He was an athlete. He was a human being beyond the military." So we told them, we don't want military pallbearers. We want friends. And then that's when Chris Reynolds jumped in, and he's just like, "Well, I'm 82nd." And he's like, "Is it okay if I'm a part of this?" And we're like, "Absolutely." So they go over to the Stickneys after the wake. They're supposed to be the pallbearers. This is a bunch of Nick's childhood friends and Chris. And they go out and they get trash drunk the night before, like, just celebrating Nick. And it was awesome, because I was there and I saw a lot of it. And I still, I can look back at it and have a smile on my face about it. And that's the way Nick would have wanted it to be. Because he was one of those guys, life of the party, first to pass out, was what one of his friends said actually at the funeral. So we're over at the funeral home. We're like, "Where are the pallbearers?" Nobody can find them. And we're like, "Where are they?" And Melissa's there, and she's just like, "Let me call them. They're still passed out over at the house." And she's like, "I'm going to get them. I'm going to have them over here. Give me like 10 minutes. So we're running behind at this point, because our pallbearers are missing. So they show up, and I mean, they look like they were hungover big time. So we all kind of got the good laugh of that, and was just like, "Yeah, Nick would have loved that one," because he would have been partying with them all. So he would have been with it right by their side. So it was fitting. We were laughing the whole time. It was very fitting. And then, we had to go through the pomp and circumstance of the military stuff, because before the funeral, over at the funeral home, you have sergeant majors you never met and he probably never met, and generals who he never met, giving you coins and, offering condolences on behalf of whoever they're representing. And then we went over to the funeral home. And then when we were there at the funeral home, we also had, not funeral home, the church. Had a couple of his friends who are the pallbearers. Actually, we told them, "Hey, we want you guys to speak, you know, if you want to, if you're comfortable to." So three of them, I believe three of them elected to. And then Bob Stickney also stepped up and said, "No, he's like, I'm not eloquent." He's like, I'm just a paratrooper." But he's like, he's my brother in arms from the 80th. And so he's like,
That
"Yeah,
is cool.
I'll step up
So
there and
you said
I'll
that,
speak." So I thought
if I
that was
remember
pretty cool.
correctly, you have a 12-year-old. Is that right? Is that your oldest?
Yeah, that's my younger. I have Kirsten is 19. So she was what,
That's what I was
8
curious
months
about is
when my brother passed
the
away. So I got a
timeline.
couple good
So
pictures of him with her.
6 months, she still doesn't remember him though. So what is your way of helping keep his
No,
memory alive with them.
no. Like, so the town did a few things to memorialize him. They took up one of the baseball fields and there's a plaque. They named it Veterans Field, and they named it Veterans Field in honor of him as well as Bobby Masillo. Like I said, his friend who's also killed in action that May. So my son played on that field for a few years when he played Salem Youth baseball. So we talked a little bit about that, and I got a couple pictures of him growing up through t-ball in the beginning stages of Little League, by the stone in it with the plaque on it. We have a road, so like the town does road signs of like different military
Oh, that's
members that
cool.
have who were killed in action, and ours is actually on our old childhood street. So we drive by that on our way out onto the main road. So I pointed out it's also a Pokestop on Pokemon Go, which is kind of cool. So I always tell my son, I'm like, hey, you get that one. Make sure you send it out so
Yes.
everybody knows who he
My
is.
brother's
I'm
got one
like,
of
that's
those
the
too
one
up
that
in
you always
Connecticut.
keep.
My
That's the
wife
gift you
is
always keep in that
level
game.
50
So
Pokemon Go. So she's they're obsessive about it. They do the same thing. They're like, oh, we make sure we get a bunch of these, send them out. Yeah, and they have it saved. Yep.
yeah, that's always the one that I'll never delete. It's always the ones like, nope. I'm like, let's see who's the furthest because I want someone in California to know. I want someone in Sweden to know.
I'll
So
have
it's
to
kind of
send you
cool to
her
say, no, I want
friend
people
code
from
so
around
you
the
guys
world
can
to
connect.
know his name. So it's a cool little. But no, like we talk enough about it to not let it be uncomfortable. With especially with my son. My son's now he was a Sea Cadet. He crossed over to Civil Air Patrol because it was a little different. He's a science guy. He's not. I kind of joke with him. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, your uncle was an infantry guy. I'm like, he's kind of rough and tumble. I'm like, you're kind of like my. You're gonna be my Space Force guy, putting rockets up into space and driving satellites out in orbit. So, but he's not afraid of the military. Like my mom's like, how can you direct him to the military after what happened? And I'm like, yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult balance. My husband served in the Marine Corps. I served in the Air Force as well as the Navy. And I sit back and I'm like, oh, I got to be careful what I direct him to because I don't want him getting this idea of joining the infantry or something. I want him to understand that he's got some science skill to him. That maybe that you can still serve without having to be that ground troop, and it's okay. Because I think as military members, we sit back and we glorify the infantrymen, which is awesome. Infantry is amazing. Those guys are a lot tougher than I'll ever be. I could never do the job. Um, I've always had mad respect for them. They're fun to go train with, but they rip their backs up, they rip their knees up. I mean, it's a rough life. It's a young man's game, and if you're looking for the long term game, go into the weather service, go to those other career fields, and they have just as dangerous jobs within those too. They have combat weather, they have all sorts of different jobs like that. But I'm very careful with my son because I'm like, ooh, I'm like, I did lose a brother. You know, I rule number two. I don't know if you've ever read the book Rule Number Two. It was great. It's a great book. But one of the quotes, young men die in war and there's nothing you can do about it. It's, you can't control it. So as I direct my son into doing something like with the military, I'm like, dude, that's always in the back of my head. But if that's what you want to do, I'll always support it. I mean, you want to support the war fighter, you want to support the military members. And, if my son chooses to be one of them, um, I mean, I'll support him. And, but, we'll definitely talk about, what the consequences can be because the consequences
It's
are
a
definitely
good
something
thought
that can
process
hit our
too.
family.
I discussed it. My son's 11, but he's got my brother's exact name. So it's first, middle, and last. So he's
Hmm.
always just kind of known about him.
Oh,
But he brought it up to me the other day
that's cool.
about military service. And I was like, I mean, nobody's forcing you into military service here. I didn't serve. I was a senior in high school when everything went down for me.
Hmm.
And that obviously just changed my trajectory of everything. And my son, I think, just because he's grown up in such
Hmm.
a honoring household where we just honor the military, their sacrifices. I think he was like, I think I might have to go into the military.
Mm.
And I was like, but it's not like that. It's, if you want to go, if that is your choice, if your heart tells you, hey, that's what you want to go into, then, go for it. But like also our family has paid their dues. You don't need to feel like, you have to go and
Right.
necessarily do that. I was like, our family serves as a Gold Star family by being able to go out and talk about this stuff, being able to share these stories and spread awareness to other people that are unaware of the sacrifice and just how big the sacrifice is. Because it's not just we didn't just lose our brother. I mean, the ripple
Mhm.
effect is crazy to me, just how much of my life has been affected for the last 19 years. Everything that I have done, every decision I've made has had that, you know, at least a little bit included to a certain it's always in my head, you know?
I mean, I'm not even dealing with it from a mother's perspective of losing a child. It's a lot different. It's a lot different to be in my mom's shoes than mine. As a sibling, it's completely different. But being a mom to a kid, to a 12-year-old boy who's able-bodied and you know potentially could want to serve, and we've talked about do you want to go to a service academy? Do you want to there's the officer side, there's the enlisted side. We have those open conversations, and it's just like, yeah, there sometimes it doesn't, your career doesn't pan out to where you want it to be. My brother didn't want to spend a career in the army. Nick wanted to, he wanted to do his time and eventually get out. I think he was going to reenlist because when our last conversations that we had was, do I stay in? And he's going to either have to become a recruiter or go to Korea. And he's just like, I want to stay with the 82nd. So he's like, let me get through this deployment, figure it out, and then I'll go from there. And I'm like, of course, I sat there and my reaction was, dipshit. Why the hell would you want to go to fucking Korea? Like, why? Like, take the recruiter's orders. You're an infantry dude. Like, we're in an active war. Take the recruiting orders. Like, there's nothing wrong with recruiting. That tells me they want you to promote. They want you to build into a career in the army. So there's nothing wrong with that. Um, One of his friends did from his unit did take. He also got offered recruiter's orders, and he took the recruiter's path. And he had told me, he's just like, yeah, he goes, both of us were offered those orders, didn't take them. I took them. And he's like, something in me tells me I wish I hadn't taken them so I could have been out there, alongside the guys downrange. But it's just like, that warrior ethos that they just jam down you when you're serving, especially in the 9/11 time frame. I mean, I was brand new to the Air Force. I was 6 months in the Air Force. Yeah, 6 months in the Air Force when 9/11. So I was fresh at my duty station, and it's they put that down your throat, and when you're looking at leaving, you kind of say, do I want to be this warrior or do I want to go this other path? And I think that's kind of where my brother was that, he enjoyed being in. And I told him, I'm like, look, there's National Guard, there's the reserves. Like, you don't have to be a full-time troop and live that life every day. Like, there's other options for you. And of course, the National Guard and the reserves got deployed more than the active duty at that time, which was absolutely crazy to me when I heard some of those numbers. But I told him, I'm like, you don't have to stay in. You can go either way. And he's like, I think maybe I'll go to Korea. And he's like, they're fighting a war out there. They're fighting a battle, on the DMZ or whatever. And I'm just like, you're absolutely fucking crazy. Why? Why? But he was into it. He had that warrior in him, and that's how I ultimately remember him. Is that he wanted to be there. He died doing something that he believed in, that he wanted to be there. And, it wasn't just like, yeah, I'm getting dragged into a deployment, don't want to be here. That wasn't him. He actually believed in the mission. He believed in his squad and his team. He never said anything negative about any of the guys that he worked with on a regular basis. So, I mean, he was when you think of that infantry troop, that was him, all day long. But, looking at my son, I'm kind of like, you don't have to be like that. You don't have to follow that path. Like you said, we've paid our dues as Gold Star families, but if he does decide to go military, I mean, I, I'm I'm not one to say don't do it, because I think service to your country is important. And that's something I would be proud of my son for choosing, especially when he's going into it
Yep.
fully knowing what the consequences can be of
Let
that
me think.
service.
Is there anything else, any other experiences or anything you've done over the past 19 years that sticks out to you?
Uh, No, I mean, I've gotten more and more private over the years with it. I talk, when people question, I kind of walk around the town, and we've got this new, like, we're a border town on Massachusetts, so we're a little bit different. We got a lot of Massachusetts folk moving up into New Hampshire. The town is turned around. There's no more really townies in the town, I guess. So it's like people who were there in 2001 are no longer really in the town, or in 2000 are no longer in that town. So they don't really know the family. They don't know, if I said, yeah, hey, that's my brother, and they're like, oh yeah, well, that's a sign. It's like, have you ever taken the moment to stop and read the sign and know what that's for? I tell all my friends in town, I'm like, yeah, if you go down to the corner of the rail trail, right down by Old Rockingham Road, there's the sign, and that's my brother's name on it, because they just don't attach the two names, my maiden name from my married name. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So some people pick up on it. I'll go down to Veterans Field, I'll see kids climbing up on the stone with the plaque on it, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, people, can you teach them respect, that you don't climb on monuments like that, or little things like that. But the town's just had a lot of changeover, so not a lot of people are still here from our generation that would have known Nick or myself. But every year I have people who reach out, to talk about Nick. Yesterday, hard day, because I start getting flooded with the messages and the emails and the texts, like, hey, how you doing? Just wanted to reach out. Chris Reynolds, the paratrooper who was at his funeral and wake, his wife actually reached out to me like a month ago and said, hey, we're thinking about coming up to New Hampshire to visit. And he's been always meaning to come out and visit. And, we're hoping to have them come up and hang out. I know my mom really liked talking to him the last time he was out. So she's open to meeting with him and, getting to kind of hang out and talk and just seeing how he's doing. And then another one of his friends is in Quincy. They were really tight friends. And, the few times that I've talked to him, he won't openly talk about the day that my brother was killed. He was there. So he just kind of shuts down, and I'm not going to press him. He's been very successful outside of the Army, and, he has a very successful family, great kids, great, his wife is awesome. So it's just, I don't want to push them or push even him too far, and just say, open up those wounds for him, because I still want to be respectful to him. He was there. Yeah, he was there.
I get
He
that.
saw my brother.
That's gotta
And
be tough, though,
I
to
don't want to open up
still
those
feel like
wounds
you
for
have
him.
part of the story missing, or that you just wanna, close that loop, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we were told one thing by the Army, but then his friend did kind of tell us what happened, that he was in a tower and that he was shot when by a sniper up in the tower. And that after it happened, they tried to get him on the radio. They hadn't found him yet. Like, they heard a shot ring out. They didn't know what it was. They were trying to get him on the radio, and he didn't answer. He didn't answer. And they sent his friend, the one from Quincy, up to go, hey, go check on your friend. Like, what the hell is he doing up there? And when he went to go push the door on the hatch open, he's like, there was something heavy on top of it. He's like, I couldn't open it. And he's like, that's when I kind of knew. And he went and he pushed it up, and they found my brother. But I mean, I still have my questions. When I was sitting at the funeral home, when my brother had come back, and I was talking to the funeral director, and I'm like, I just don't get it. And she's like, I'm like, when we talked, I'm like, you had talked about an open casket. I'm like, how is that possible if he got shot in the head? And she's just like, oh, it wasn't that bad. She's like, and she showed me, and it was like a burnt part of his ear, and it looked like that it had entered like through the earlobe, but it had like burn marks around it. So like that, to me, I'm just like, I'm no forensics expert, but as the sister, I just kind of sit back and I'm like, there's so many details and so many questions I have. And once the Army's out of your life, the Army, they claim that they have people that'll talk to you. They claim that they'll be there for you. Bullshit. They're not. They're not. His casualty assistance officer was great through the process. We had talked to him a few times, like within the year after. And then, he left the Army, or he retired from the Army. So that was our last connection, and just no information from there. So I'm just like, well, I have questions. Still can't connect all the dots as to how this happened, what happened, and, why it happened. So I think that's my biggest
I
sticking
can see that
point
being difficult.
as a sister, sitting
That's,
back and, and
it
looking at everything.
unfortunately, a pretty common theme that I hear too, where it's, the story is the family's told one thing, and then the story seems to evolve as time goes on. And I kind of feel like I'm the same way too. Like,
Yep.
I don't necessarily like telling people exactly how it happened, because I've heard several different stories throughout the years. And I don't like to get corrected by other people. Somebody, oh, well, no,
Yeah.
like,
Same here.
at this point, this is my memory. This is how it's working for me. I don't really need to open that back up, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah, and that's kinda how I am too. Because 'cause I'm like, I don't wanna keep dwelling on it. It's like, bottom line, my brother's not here. He's missed out on so much in life, but he's not coming back. So I have to find that level of cope where,
yeah.
yeah, I want answers, but I also need to watch out for my mental health in the whole process and say, "Eh, just stop. Just stop. Accept your brother's not here. It sucks,
So
but
before we go, anything
you
that you
gotta
would
accept it,
say
right?"
to any other Gold Star families going through this, or any final words?
Yeah, just keep their memory alive. Keep talking about their loved ones. They deserve it. Let let little siblings, let little cousins, brothers, like anybody in the family, nieces, nephews, even the newer generations, the nieces and nephews that weren't there and necessarily didn't get to know them or meet them. Let them know who they are and don't be afraid to talk about it because I think that's while the wounds will never heal, talking helps. Helps
Awesome.
slow bring that hole and make it a little bit smaller.
Kim, thank you for your patience with the release of this episode. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your strength. And thank you for continuing to say your brother's name. Nick was more than a uniform. He was a wrestler, a musician, a brother, a son, a friend, a paratrooper who believed in what he was doing. And like so many families we talked to here, the story didn't end on the battlefield. It continued at the front door. It continued in the silence. It continued in the questions that never quite get answered. Kim has carried this for 19 years. Not just the loss, but the responsibility, the memory, the legacy. That's what Gold Star families do. They carry what others cannot see. This episode moved you, share it. If it made you uncomfortable, sit with it. If you know a Gold Star family, check on them. And as always, we remember. To Corporal Nicholas Nick Arvanitis, to the tall, awkward kid in the batter's box, to the wrestler, to the musician, to the paratrooper who chose the 82nd because it meant something to him, to the brother who made his sister the first call, to the son who would have laughed at shutting down the highway for his final ride home, to the friend who partied hard and was loved even harder, and to Kim for carrying his name, for protecting his memory, for showing up 19 years later and still telling his story. We do not forget. We do not look away. We raise a glass to service, to sacrifice, to family, to love that doesn't end when life does. Say their name, Corporal Nick Arvanitis.